When I touched this pen, I saw someplace amazing.
I had my hopes set high for Tomorrowland early on. During the 2014 New York Comic-Con, I got the full spiel on the movie months in advance. That it was directed by Brad Bird of The Incredibles and Iron Giant fame, that it was a bright, optimistic movie about a hopeful future inspired by what's now called retrofuturism, and that it promised all sorts of wonderful things and it would take viewers to bright, brave new worlds. On May 22nd, 2015, Tomorrowland hit theaters, and before I went to go see the movie, I read some reviews. Apparently, most other critics didn't seem to like the movie. The main complaints about the film, it seemed, were its overly optimistic tone, and that the last 20 minutes of the movie fall apart entirely. I thus walked into Tomorrowland completely ready to dismiss it critically. I was certain that it would be as saccharine as everybody was saying. Boy, was I wrong. Tomorrowland is absolutely wonderful. The film opens with Frank Walker, George Clooney, introducing himself and his lemma, only to be cut short by Casey Newton, that is, Britt Robertson, who thinks that the story should start in a happier place. The film then cuts to a younger version of Frank at the 1964 World's Fair, entering an experimental jetpack into a sort of competition. Regrettably, his jetpack is imperfect, and after giving a cute speech about hope, he's turned away by Hugh Laurie's character. While he was rejected by the competition's authority, a mysterious girl named Athena, played by Raffi Cassidy,
I'm the future.
takes a liking to him and decides to give the bright-eyed boy genius a shot at something. It's not made clear initially what that something is, and for good reason. Later in the film, we're introduced to Casey Newton, a curious kid with a penchant for getting herself in trouble. After one incident, she comes to possess a mysterious pin emblazoned with the letter T. Making contact with it pulls her out of her current reality and into another, specifically a warmly lit field of wheat, from which one can see the beautiful utopic city, the sort of thing you'd see in the Jetsons or on the cover of old science fiction novels. It's the great culmination of everybody's dreams of tomorrow, where everybody dresses like a K-pop star for some reason. Casey Newton pursues this vision of the city, and she eventually collides with Frank Walker, although Walker is no longer the optimistic little boy genius that he once was. Instead, he's become an old curmudgeon who's holed himself up in a little house somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and his grating, pessimistic attitude comes to clash against Casey's stubborn hope for the world that she saw when she touched the pin. As you can guess, the two go on an adventure together. I know that I'm paraphrasing a certain famous phrase when I say that a pessimist is just a disappointed optimist, but what happens in Tomorrowland seems to be the very embodiment of this idea. The gritty, sarcastic layers of cynicism that have been heaped upon Frank Walker throughout the years wind up getting peeled away whenever they come into conflict with Casey's character. This, I think, was one of the better ways that the film got its message across. Speaking about the message in Tomorrowland, as mentioned before, it's one of optimism and hope and of placing a high value on ideas and dreaming. But it does also dare to venture a bit past that. The film also has a bit of a push not to let your dreams go rotten on you. That is, once you have your dream, you'd best be doing something with it. This was a pretty interesting theme in the film, though unfortunately I feel that it did get overshadowed a little bit by the film's over-insistence on optimism at times. I understand now what my fellow critics meant when they said that the film was way too heavy-handed with its messages. In order to create the contrast of worlds, of the world of people dreaming positively and the world of people not, there's a bit of a heavy emphasis on doom and gloom in the world of people who aren't thinking positively. It's meant to reflect the current media landscape that we live in, a world of disaster movies and dystopian books, a world where there are 24/7 news networks where you can tune into a war. While I do think that some contrast would have definitely helped the movie, for instance, there's a certain classroom scene which I really liked, unfortunately it tended to lean into overkill territory.
Perpetual war, the possibility of mutually assured destruction, became inevitable.
While the film's insistence on its themes could at times be a little too hard-hitting, it didn't ruin the movie. They didn't give it the artificial, saccharine, oversweet feel that I was anticipating, which is great. In general, I really like the story of the movie. Besides its refreshing sense of optimism, it just feels like a combination of really good things. There's bits of steampunk with elements of Terminator and Alice in Wonderland in there. And if you don't think that those pieces of a movie can work together, you really have to see Tomorrowland. It's action-packed with crazy twists and turns, and although it sometimes felt over the top, doing things simply because they are cool but not because they're practical, such as launching a rocket out of a major landmark, it doesn't really hurt the movie. There's something about its vibe that makes it feel a lot more like an old-fashioned adventure. If you enjoyed A Wrinkle in Time, the book, that is, Rocketeer, the Disney movie, that is, if you like high-flying adventures, or maybe you're just looking for a reprieve from the sad dystopian films that we've been seeing lately, give Tomorrowland a shot. It's rated PG and came to theaters on May 22nd, 2015. Be sure to follow at Blackman and Robin on Twitter and Instagram for more movie and game news, reviews, previews, and interviews. Follow me at Jordan_Cameron for my other views.
Come on! Get in!
How is this a good idea?
You ain't seen nothing yet. Hang on! You wanted to see Tomorrowland. Here it comes.